Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Back here again with the same panel as yesterday, and it's going to be a continuation of work problems, relationships at work, and really more towards different types of job opportunities that are available out there. A lot of us, we spoke of it when we were with President Hamad. We go for the mainstream professions, becoming a doctor, becoming a solicitor, or you become an accountant, and that's it. We don't look beyond that. Whereas what we did mention in that discussion was there's so much you can pick up in terms of experience, volunteering, whether it be in small organizations, whether it be paid voluntary, well, not paid voluntary, but you're there for very little hours, but you are remunerated for some of the work and the time that you do spend there. And all of this goes a very, very, very long way. So in let's start with volunteering. I know, for example, Molana Moeen on my left has had quite a lot of volunteering experience with charities.
Charities, yeah.
How does that go? And what skills can you pick up working for a charity?
Starting off working in a charity, or not even working, volunteering for a charity, I think is the best way to start. Because with charity work, it really opens your skills, your skill set, such as your personal skills, your interpersonal skills, how to talk to people, opening yourself up in order to converse with other people. Now when you're asking, look, you're bringing yourself to such a level when you're on the streets and you're doing, let's for example, you're doing street collections and you're asking someone for money for someone else and you're getting turned down, you're getting rejected, you're literally getting told, no, I'm not giving you nothing, you're getting ignored. Some people will take that rejection and they'd say, do you know what, I'm not doing this no more. Whereas other people use that as an opportunity to build their character, to learn that in life there are going to be difficult situations, there are going to be difficult conversations that you're going to end up needing to have, and that will help you in your work life and in life generally.
Teaches you a lot of tolerance.
It teaches you a lot of tolerance. It teaches you a lot of sabr. It teaches you how to deal with people, because you're going to be, like I said, you're going to be stood there and you're going to be putting yourself in a certain situation where you might get rejected, and you probably will get rejected, and it will humble you. It truly will humble you, but at the same time it will open you up as a person, and your character will become
You've
easy.
mentioned sabr. Hafiz, how many times does the Quran go into the realms and speaks about sabr? It's absolutely phenomenal.
You know, sabr, definitely. Just want to touch on what you said about volunteering. There is another side to volunteering as well, that's of extreme benefit, and that's networking.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Networking is one of the major ways that you're going to find success in this dunya now. As you mentioned on a previous podcast, it was yourself, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly.
So volunteering is great for that. I was just thinking, is volunteering mentioned in the Quran?
Is it?
And if you take the zahiri meaning, the literal meaning, it is mentioned in the Quran. وَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. So whoever voluntarily does something, it's better for him. That's the apparent meaning and the literal meaning, sorry. So definitely, especially if you observe everyone who's successful in a certain field, you will find that they had time volunteering in that field. It's very, very common. Speaking from an imam's point of view as well, almost every imam begins as a volunteer. You begin stepping in for your teacher here and there, free of charge, free of anything, because it's not a job that initially was to be paid for anyway. But volunteering, and especially amongst the youth nowadays, we find that there's this lack of commitment amongst the youth, and volunteering on your CV is one of the greatest way to show that you have the will and you're committed to whatever you want to do. It's not about the money, it's not about the financial payout I get, it's about me just doing well and doing whatever I do to do
in
that well.
order to become a medic, just to get into medical school, you have to do a certain amount of hours of voluntary work just to be able to get into medical school. Now if you've not done that, they won't even look at your application. They won't even look twice at your application. If you've not done voluntary work at St. John's Ambulance Service, if you've not done volunteering at maybe a hospital, you have to do volunteering
because
for a lot of different jobs.
It demonstrates that you're so committed to the cause or to the job role, not to the payout of the job.
See, when people complain about there's no point applying at this job even though I have a master's or a degree, accountancy for example, I had a lot of friends that really shied away from applying because there's no experience. But this is where the element of volunteering or nafal as we say comes in, is you have to go out and get that experience. And sometimes, most of the time, for me at least, in my experience, the people that I've met, it's not always about the money. Because when you start off without money and you work hard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up so many doors for you, and you're basically then smashing it. And we can relate to this, Hafiz Sahib, you can especially, is when you started your Jummah bayans way before the likes of myself and the senior class which have graduated. How many weeks did you spend just reading hadith from the books, 5 minutes towards the end? And that really built up your confidence, because it was all voluntary, wasn't it?
Before, like Hafiz mentioned, for anyone to progress in any field, in any sector, every person will have had voluntary work.
Definitely.
There is no way you're just going to rock up on a paid role and say, look, I'm going to be smashing it.
Subhanallah.
You start on a voluntary role where even if you make mistakes, you slip up, you're not held accountable, because they know you're only volunteering.
Yeah.
You're learning, you're getting that experience. And you know why something I share with my students is mic time. Yeah, we've had those discussions.
Of course we have. Yeah,
It's like,
I think the entire panel, other than yourself, has benefited from the mic time we've received from your
100%. I think we've all had that mic time in Jamia Rasul.
Alhamdulillah.
And that's where you start, don't you?
100%.
It's like in the way that the viewers would understand this, especially the youngsters. You have a player that has pitch time, you have field time, how much he's played on the field, and that will portray or display to some level how much experience he has and how much he's done, how much field experience he has. For a da'i or a du'at, it's the mic time that you need, being able to express yourself. And I remember when I started, my first ever talk, believe it or not, was supposed to be Mi'raj al-Nabi. Really easy subject, yeah? And I had prepared something on Salah. Guess what happened? The main imam who was going to come for the main talk, so what I did was, rather than staying in the masjid because I know nobody's going to call me up, I stood outside. And I'm just waiting for the main guest, because I know by the time the main guest comes, it's so long.
You're not going to get a shout.
I'm not going to get a shout because I'm too young to be called up when all these great ulama are there. So then I walked in with the main speaker. Afterwards, I got a drilling from you. Like, where on earth were you? Yeah, I was waiting outside for the main guest. I was going to bring him inside
to receive him.
But I started literally with the Friday talk. So Qibla Walid Sahib would do his Friday talk, 25 minutes. I would, whilst he's speaking, I'm making my notes and translating in my own words.
Summarizing basically.
And the last 5 minutes, I'd get up, do a brief. This is what was discussed in English, and that's it. That I kept up for a few months. Then we said, okay, you've got enough experience. Before I come on, you do 10 minutes. So started by doing 10 minutes before he would come. Then that's where I actually pulled my first role as an imam, because I was doing those 5-10 minute early talks. And Quba Masjid, Haji Ghulam Rasul and a few other members came and for some collections for the masjid. This is going back 10 years now.
Okay.
And they saw myself speak. They obviously, for them, it was the first time they were seeing somebody young speaking. And I think I was speaking on, what was it? It was, in those days, the Danish cartoons came out.
Oh, yeah.
So I was winding up the entire community. We've got a fill-up bus and we're going London. So they heard me do that. Afterwards, when the masjid was ready, they actually rang Abuji, and that's where I landed my first Jummah role. But it was off that voluntary role that I first started, got the experience.
Yeah.
They liked what they saw, and then I went there, and alhamdulillah, the journey's only building.
There is a Quranic story we actually recited in Taraweeh today, which really shows the benefits of voluntary work. So we've got Sayyidina Musa alayhi wa ala nabiyina salatu wassalam, and he's sort of run away from Cairo, or from Egypt, or it wasn't Cairo at the time actually, northern Egypt, and he's gone towards Madian. And there he finds a watering station near Madian, and there are some people taking water, drawing water, and there's 2 ladies or so not taking any water. So voluntarily he helps them out. فَسَقَى لَهُمَا, he helps them out. And as a direct result of that voluntary work and the dua he made, especially at the time of that, he then finds himself moments later married to the daughter of a prophet, himself a prophet, married to a daughter of a prophet, and with a work contract of 8 to 10 years. So when you do voluntary, like I said, the ayah, the apparent meaning, وَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ, whoever does voluntary work, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ, is better for him. it's always going to result in a positive outcome. And I think the chairman was mentioning about what you bring to the table as well. So youngsters, you haven't got much experience, and when you've applied for a big job like that, you really need to sell yourself, and one of the major things you can sell yourself of is the volunteering work you've done, the voluntary work that you've done in whatever charitable cause, in a business or whatever. It really sets you apart.
I think masajid are a perfect place to start volunteering.
100%.
Oh, 100%.
I think, look, we've got behind the camera a number of people who volunteer, and
They're all
they can vouch for themselves. Volunteering in a mosque is not just picking up cups after people or whatever. There's so many things. There's elements of business within there. There's elements of people management with there. Yes, hygiene and cleaning things as well. So masjid is definitely opportunity, and no mosque is going to turn you down. Mosques right now more than ever need the youth to come and show their dedication to Allah.
Aside the imam, of course, the respect, the reverence, and the honor, as Hafiz has mentioned, is there from the community. But one thing I've experienced is and see all the time is who are the group of people or a person that receives the most respect after the imam. It's the khuddam. And whenever there's a gathering, whenever there's a mahfil, and they make a dua and announcement, the first batch of people they thank are the volunteers for doing their khidmah. And I think, just as you mentioned about iftar as well, the brothers that come in, even at Jamia Rasuliya, and set up the iftar, it's a daily, they can do iftar in the comforts of their home, but they're leaving their families behind, and they come into the masjid, and it's such an amazing practice. Just to, of course, add on and support your point.
So when going back to the point that Hafiz Fahim was just mentioning before, what you bring to the table is important.
Indeed.
Now when you're young, you've not got much experience, and you're not going to have experience, because all that time you might have been in university, college, you've been studying, and when you out into the big bad world, as they call it, you don't have any skills, you don't have any actual experience, but what you do have is a skill set. You have certain skills that can apply to the job.
Definitely.
But if you've not done volunteering, if you've not tried and helped out in certain situations, certain environments, you won't have those certain skills that they require.
You're not going to explore.
As someone comes to mind, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, of a volunteer who was one of the greatest people in history, greatest persons in history, and they received one of the greatest virtues in history, was she's described as a black lady or a black man who used to clean the masjid of Prophet Sallallahu and she would clean that voluntarily. And when she had passed away, her funeral was prayed and she was buried, but the Prophet Sallallahu wasn't directly made aware of that. I mean, the companions didn't tell him. So when he's come to the mosque and he's found her absence, or his absence, the narration mentions both, he was actually somewhat upset that why didn't you inform me of that person passing away? And he then asks them, Dullani, show me her grave, and he offered the janazah over her again. 2 janazahs performed, one by the companions and one by the Prophet himself, for that person who voluntarily cleaned the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So when you do these voluntary acts, when you actually get these skill sets, and you can apply these to these certain roles, then they look at you. If you show that you're hardworking, that's the main thing they look for. They look for whether you're actually going to work, whether you're actually willing to learn.
Are you turning up on time?
Yeah, if you're not willing to learn in the first place, you're at a loss regardless. Going to the masjid, literally to volunteer, you're learning how to take care of the masjid. You're sitting with the imams to help them. You end up learning something. Yeah. That eagerness to learn, that hard-working, character that you have, that will rub off, and they'll see that. I mean, the main reason why I got my job, I had no experience before this. When I had a degree in chemistry, alhamdulillah. I got my degree, I had no experience. I had absolutely no experience. I was finding it tough to get the job. But then I worked in manufacturing. I worked at the lowest of the low. I literally worked at moving boxes. Nothing to do with my degree. But I worked in the environment, in the company, in order to show that I'm hardworking. I showed them that I was hardworking. I showed them that I was willing to learn. Even if it meant I was working moving boxes. Then I said to them, I'm willing to learn how to move that trolley into this autoclave in order to start it and sterilize this. You learn certain skills. That showing that willingness got me the next job. I didn't have experience compared to other people.
You mentioned off camera about FA coaches and stuff like that. How did they get to the top positions? If you want to elaborate on that.
I think, again, for them, it's voluntary work. Of course, when they are going through the certification and degree and what have you, I was fortunate enough to do all this in college, so it was free of charge. It was not paid for. But there are so many places, grassroots, Power League in Manchester, or VIDA as we used to say,
Vida.
that provide these opportunities. And what they do is they seek out Easter, spring and summer camps, and they turn up there. Obviously there are, without mentioning too many names, there's a lot of franchises, and in Charlton as well there's football clubs where you can actually go and volunteer. And the places that are in most need of this, and this is how I got the recognition, is through schools. Is you go and you speak to them, send an email, or do it through the body that you are studying from or gaining a qualification, whether it's college or of course the FA, okay? And it all starts off as a voluntary basis. You're given a group of children or a class or a certain group which you're comfortable with, 7 to 8 year olds, 11 to 12 and so have you. This is how it all begins, and before you know it you've got these bags of experience in working in schools, dealing with parents, children, teachers, head teachers, other external staff members, external agencies. You've got these bags and bags of experience, and when you actually apply for that role, it becomes really easy for you.
I suppose the point we're trying to get to is youngsters really shouldn't shy away from adding to their skill set, even if it's not related to the field that you want to get to. It all adds. I mean, one of the greatest avenues, especially for our South Asian community, a lot of people are forced into it as well, is serving in the family business.
Yeah.
This is a great way of picking up and developing skills. So I remember myself being 12, 13 years old, and because my dad's lack of English, I had to broker deals with him with Dubai, do commodity codes, import, export, all of that at 13 years old, 14 years old. And that's where I really picked up mathematics, especially on the spot, having to figure things out, work out his taxes and this and that, 12, 13 years old. And so working within your family business is a great way for the youth especially to go and see the real world out there and pick up skills. And you have the comfort of falling back onto your dad, whoever owns the business. Should you go wrong, well, I'm a kid at the end of the day. So you shouldn't shy away from it. I think schools try to do that as well. They try to do work experience with youngsters as well.
You have to make an effort.
You have to make an effort.
The problem we're having now is kids are on social media.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem they have. They won't go and spend that, let's say in your case, that hour, 2 hours to support your father, their family-run business. They'd rather be on their phone, lying in bed, going on social media, flicking through people's profiles. They find them more engaging, more interesting.
Isn't it the Quran that says, وَأَلَّيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى? That mankind won't get anything other than what they have put effort in.
What they've tried.
Your sa'a.
Yeah.
So you have to make that effort.
You have to make that effort. So spending that time. So going back to that masjid environment, you also learn, group skills. Being able to work with a group is what a lot of youngsters cannot manage at all. They find it difficult. Obviously, you have the character clashes. You learn to compromise on that. You learn to take somebody's lead. You learn, if you're given the opportunity, you lead a group of other volunteers. So let's say if it's something as simple as iftar, laying down the plates and cups and the spoons, and you're given the role, look, you're going to do the water today. You're going to do all the picking up. You're going to be giving out distributing the naans today. But having that lead role, actually, you'll get that recognition. And you're building that skill. So when you go to a workplace and you're put in that situation where you're having to work with a group, they'll notice, he's got leading skills.
Yeah.
So
he's got management skills.
I'll give you an example of that. Within the masjid, myself, for example, volunteering, helping with the funerals. I would just help and watch what was happening, see how it worked, help out where I could, maybe carry, a coffin for about 2 minutes, a minute, whatever it is, and watching the whole process. And it came to a point where I was able to take the whole funeral from start to end. And you only get to lead things after you've gone through that volunteering process. They see that you're trustworthy. They notice that you have certain skills and certain skill sets, and then you're able to do these things. But without doing that volunteering, like you said, without actually trying to help out within the masjid, within any environment, whatever it is, whether you're working to become a coach, whether you're working, and even if it's not to work, like Hafiz said, even if it's not for a specific thing that you want to get into, building up your skill set is extremely important.
Yeah, and it links back to that networking thing. When you're in those fields, your face is being shown, your name is being mentioned, and that it's only ever going to be of profit and benefit to you. One day you'll find yourself needing to do something, and just because of that experience, you knew the right person at the right time, or they wanted to do something and they knew about you at the right time. So putting yourself out. I think we've got a question from our live audience.
Live audience.
Yeah.
Hafiz was saying before that he used to give his speeches in the masjid. And as students that aspire to be Alim Deen, what are some tips or basic tips you can give for giving a good speech, an engaging speech?
An engaging speech.
If you want to repeat the question.
So what can students do in order to start delivering talks and engaging speeches? I mean, first comes knowledge. You have to equip yourself with the knowledge first. Once you have the knowledge, then what I personally feel is every person will develop his own oratory skills. You can't copy mine. I can't copy Hafiz Saab's. Definitely not. Everybody's going to have their own style, the way they deliver, and it just works for them. And the community starts to appreciate, the flavor that you bring in. And imagine if all the speakers were to speak exactly the same.
You get bored.
You'll get really bored. It ain't going to work. But knowledge first, and then start at home. Start with your siblings.
I would add to that.
Start with your nieces, nephews. Just small 5-10 minutes, a seerah talk, discussion. And then slowly you'll see it build. And we mentioned volunteering.
Yeah,
then your name will start to come up. Yeah, so like at MCM we have weekly assembly. So my plan, inshallah, is the one with the Dars Islamic class. By next year, on that Monday assembly, every week have somebody else come up and deliver a 5 to 10 minute talk.
That's good.
Once they have the relevant experience, then push them to the Jummah. So before my Jummah talk begins, they do a short 5-minute talk in my supervision. Then that's their mic time building.
Yeah.
And then there will come a time where if a masjid needs somebody to lead a Jummah, we've got somebody with at least a good 5-6 hours of talking time. Mic time. He's ready to move out.
Also, you can shadow the people who are already doing it. That's one of the best things to do. So I think under the ayah of فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, we definitely learn that when you want to know something, you go to the people who know it. Go to the experts. So one of the ways I picked up my speaking style was by amalgamating my teacher's speaking styles. I would sit with them and see his nuances and how he delivers his speech and how he pushes his punchlines or whatever. And I went to another teacher. One teacher prepares overly, another teacher is very laid back in his approach, and I sort of amalgamate that in my approach as well. So comes back to volunteering, shadowing your teachers, shadow the people who are already doing it. You'll find yourself doing it as well.
There's also a dark side to volunteering.
No, there is.
What's the dark side?
Now, the dark side which we really need to be addressing also is too much volunteering and neglecting your family members, the rights of Allah and His Rasul, the rights of your parents, your spouse, your children, only because I'm volunteering. And we know that, I personally know one case where it's boggled down to a divorce now.
Wow.
So initially it started as I'm volunteering, I'm doing charity work. And which spouse would ever say, no, don't do charity work? That's like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. You even got any faith, any iman left in you? I'm helping the poor, I'm helping the orphans. Okay, fair enough. But then there comes a point where you become so passionate, you actually forget that people around you have rights as well. So when we talk about, volunteering in masjid and stuff, it's all good, but there has to be a balance.
Yeah. I mean, if you find yourself this is common amongst a lot of mosques, people who are volunteering during the Taraweeh time. So what they will have to do is, because they have to be actively, maybe they're doing security or car park management, they're not praying the Taraweeh. And what you'll find, there might be a case where a guy has gone the entire Ramadan and he hasn't even offered 2 rakats of Taraweeh, maybe not in his own, but not in the Jamaat at all. I think you have to draw the line there when you find when your volunteering is detrimental to your spiritual or religious development as well.
Is it true, Sahab, there's an 8 rakat parking and a 20 rakat parking now as well?
Well, unfortunately,
you just mentioned that, it's come to mind.
Yeah.
There is.
There was a sign up, 8 rakat this way,
pretty sure.
20 this way.
I've seen the people leave. I don't really know. But going on what Ustad just said.
Dark side.
Yeah, what Ustad just said.
Yeah.
Our religion is a religion of being in the middle. You have to know your balance. If you don't have your balance set correctly, things will start being lopsided. Things will fall in the wrong places, 100%. I'm sure, like you said, if you do too much volunteering, it could end up in divorce. But then you've got the other side. You don't volunteer at all. You're
not getting anything.
I think when you know the masjid is most active, when there's gatherings, when there's taraweeh, when there's iftar, when there's a communal thing going on in the masjid, when you know you can actually benefit from this voluntary work, it's probably best off to do it then, because I've seen myself, sometimes youngsters, they're very passionate and they're very enthusiastic, but they're almost now, and you can really address this, basically just loitering around the masjid and doing nothing. When there's nothing on, there's no activities, there's no Jummah, there's no parking issues, there's no community around, you're just basically wandering aimlessly.
In the masjid scenario, it's still not a bad thing, because if you're going to loiter, if you're just going to do nothing, the best place to do it is
to do it in the masjid.
There's always a spiritual benefit.
Better than the streets.
It's better than the
I
streets,
do
100%.
understand that, where if you haven't got anything to put on the table, there are other places, there are other things you can do. Suppose the point we're trying to make is don't idle. As a youngster, these are your formative years. If you can really smash out during these years and pick up as many skills as you can, you'll be rich, and I mean rich internally, mentally, spiritually, and that can lead to financial.
It's like the
as
saying
well.
is, when you're young, you have all the time in the world, but you have no money. And when you're older, you have all the money in the world, but no time.
And likewise, health. When you're young, you've got the physical capability to do everything, but you're not doing it. And when you reach old age, you know,
And if you
I think that hadith comes to
At least the
mind.
hadith you shared.
Go on, if you want to share that hadith.
No, if you want to share this, because you've got the Arabic
So there
as
is-
well.
there-
mashallah.
The same one.
Yeah, we are thinking of the same one.
5, take advantage of 5 things over
Before, yeah.
5.
Yes, what are the 5? Bismillah.
So the first one was good health over
Sickness.
illness,
Mhm.
life over death.
Mm.
There was wealth over
Poverty.
poverty, and there was your yalla ya shabab, your youth over old age.
لعل الشباب
And was
يعود.
there one more?
And I think that was it.
That was it.
That was it.
Subhanallah.
And that really sums up what we are trying to say here. In the youth, you've got all of those things. Maybe not the wealth aspect too much, but there's always access to funds. You can always find funding. And that goes back to networking. I know youngsters who have had a business proposition, who have something in mind, and just through the powers of networking, somebody has approached them and said, "Do you know what? I'm going to back you financially. I'm going to put my money in you." You know, people do that. You know, especially I know a student of knowledge, for example, who showed so much prowess in his dedication to the religion that someone has come forth and said, "Do you know what? The rest of your life, I'm going to sponsor that." There is an actual case. I'm sure we all know of that case. So, as a youngster, you really need to take heed of that hadith and take advantage of your youth over your, before you reach old age.
That's the biggest problem with the time. It's not used wisely.
Yeah.
It's like
And you know, if you put in the effort, if you actually put in the effort, you will find that you can actually chill more in the end. When you've done what you need to. Now we will find is youth have realized when it's too late that I've spent all my time chilling, and now the time for graft has come, and it's so depressing because it's graft upon graft upon graft. I've got no time to relax. Whereas those people who have done their hard effort in the first place, at the same age, will find themselves in positions where everything's just on automatic
You actually
mode.
find that the
And-
graft becomes a chill in itself
It
because
does.
you enjoy what you
You
do
enjoy
so much.
Look, if you look at yourself and you think to yourself, look, if I had studied 10 years earlier, I would have been at this point a long time ago. You always say that to yourself. You always think, oh, if I had done this, if I had done that. But that's where it comes to the point where you've got that time, but are we using it wisely? The
I think
youth.
you had a live question as well about a sister's asked about her spouse spending too much time doing voluntary work, the spouse neglecting and not being at home.
Yeah.
Leading back to the same point I made, where I know this personal case where it's led to a divorce. The reason why I'm hitting back on that again, I think there's some advice that needs to be shared, especially for sisters that are doing charity work, for them to spend extensive hours outside the home. Let's suppose a married sister is doing so.
Traveling abroad.
She must have permission of her spouse.
Yeah.
If she's traveling without the permission of her spouse, she's sinning.
Am I right in saying she can't even keep a fast?
Yeah.
Without the permission of her
Nothing,
husband. Think
yeah.
about that. A voluntary
An optional,
fast.
yeah.
You must seek the permission of your husband, and there's reasons for that, because the rights of the husband is involved in this as well.
Yeah.
So that's what you're trying to
So
say.
for
isn't
her
it?
to go out and do so much charity work that she's neglecting her child,
Yeah.
her husband's not getting one of his rights is, well, he would ask, well, in the Hanafi school he doesn't have to really, that's a separate discussion. It's food.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't want to open a can of worms. It's food. Unless the general understanding is come home, the wife will prepare the food. He's come home for weeks on weeks, there's no food at home being prepared. He's having to get takeaway, or he's living on cereals. There'll come a breaking point where he will ask, look, what have I got out of giving her permission to go do charity work? If anything, he's lost out.
Junkies.
And because of that loss, you'll realise there's a breakdown of many marriages that are taking place. then you're exposed to so much fitna out there. Now, as a husband at home, his wife's not there, and she's coming late nights. There will come a point where he will start to have doubts. There will come a point where he will question, who were you with? Who's dropped you home?
Even though sometimes the husband can be inspired by shaitan to do things in the absence of his wife as well.
Yes,
very
that
common.
also, and
Very
if
common.
it's under the name, under the effort of
The guise.
voluntary charitable work, I think that's a recipe for disaster.
But what about the flip side though? What if the guy is constantly doing volunteering work,
Same thing.
not making enough money
Same.
to provide for his wife, and he's telling her, doesn't matter, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah, this, that, the other. What do we
It's
do in
like
that
you said,
case?
وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We're an ummah of balance. You have to balance family life, voluntary work, and your work life as well. And the point you made, if somebody's doing sort of voluntary work, he's not actually getting a paid job or not doing enough paid hours of work to provide and put on the table food or to give a shelter for his wife, then he himself really needs to ask which direction he's going in.
Also, if you're not fulfilling your fard, then your nawafil and your tatawwa, it doesn't mean anything anyway in that regard. I want to slowly move on because we're trying to address employability as well. Another thing that I wanted to address is education. So one of the things that youth are thinking now, or they've been forced to think, is that the education that's been offered by the state is sufficient for you to become an employable individual, and it really is not the case.
It's not.
A youth should be actively, after finishing their studies or even alongside it, seeking further education. One of the things I've really seen amongst the youth is the lack of communication skills, and I mean language skills by that. Vocab, extremely limited. Your street language, it's very, very off-putting to an employer. So to go and learn language, better your vocab, and be able to present yourself and present the organization that you want to work for or whatever product is you're selling, it's very, very important to have language skills. If you can't orate, if you can't put the right words on the table, doesn't matter how good that product is or what good idea you want to put forward, it's never going to be heard.
Right, if you can't articulate yourself.
Interviews now, they're very kind of picky, and this was mentioned yesterday as well, that a person's CV may actually look good and you think, wow, this guy's in for the money. But when you actually sit him down and ask the 6 competency-based questions, and he's stuttering, and you just know as an interviewer that these are not real life scenarios, they've just been made up, or templates online or what have you. And then you'll have someone who's got a shocking CV, grammatically, shocking is probably not a good word, but his vocab and just the words used in there are not up to scratch and they're not good. Whereas when you sit with that person and you ask the questions, they're absolutely smashes. So I completely agree with you.
It's like I've interviewed people before for the role that I was in.
Wow.
And I've actually sat there and I've gone through CVs and I've looked at CVs. Some have looked absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Once you read the content, it's a shambles. Once you meet them, it's a shambles. But then I've met people where it might not look the greatest, like you said, but when you sit down with them, they can articulate themselves in a certain way. They've got, let's say, the gift of the gab, as you could call
Does
it.
presentation not come into it again? That's another thing that I'm really wary of with the youth. They don't care about the physical presentation, like clothing as well.
Yes.
You got people turning up to interviews in tracksuit bottoms, and you might think, what's the problem in that?
Big problem.
But the point is, you're trying to put yourself forward as a professional individual, someone who cares about image. If you don't care about your own image, then what care are you going to have for your company's image or the product that you're putting forward as well?
They turn up with trousers and trainers.
Trousers and trainers or shirts that are not tucked in. You have to understand, when you look at the elite, those who are at the top, look how they dress. Look at the attention to detail, whether it's the cufflinks, whether it's the watch or the ring, or whatever it may be.
Mentioned this in the previous one as well, that if you have a beard, some people are shy, the beard's too big and what have you, then maintain the beard. The Prophet ﷺ's beard was described as the semicircle of the moon. And Allah Hazrat mentions so he says Rish Khosh Mu'tadil Marham Rish Dil, uses the word Rish twice, once meaning beard, one meaning wound. So he says anyone who sees this beautiful semicircle moon-like beard of the Prophet ﷺ, it removes all wounds of the heart. He uses the word, so it says Halai Mahin Nudrat Billah Salam, just came into mind. Maintain that beard, and people will say, I'm fakir and this is fakir. Fakiri is one thing, and then just being a straight up caveman doesn't really help either. So presentation, Hafiz is so key.
And the hadith comes to mind. Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. Allah is beautiful himself, Jalla fi ula, and He loves that which is beauty. And I think that the scholar, he famously said that zuhud, being a faqir, being an ascetic, is not even in the apparel anyway.
Yeah.
It's about the zuhud of the heart.
Allahu
So
Akbar.
people who think that wearing patchy clothes means I'm more spiritual, it actually doesn't.
No.
If you look at the likes of Imam Abu Hanifa,
Yeah.
Al-Imam Al-A'zam, radiyallahu anhu wa
Allahu
ardah,
Akbar.
the greatest scholar in history, Al-Imam Al-A'zam,
Allahu Akbar.
what a prestigious title. He would wear the best of garments. If you look at the likes of Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah, wa radiya an, he would wear the best of threads of garments that he had at that time.
Allahu Akbar.
So it's not a compromise for you to try to wear the best, to have the best, whatever it is, whether it's a suit, it's tailor-made or whatever it is. It's not a compromise of your religion or your asceticism or your connection to Allah in that regards. No.
The appearance that you give off, it's like they say, don't judge a book by its cover. But when you actually look
But what's the
at
cover
the
for
cover,
then, brother?
when you look at the cover,
That's what I would ask. What's the cover
no,
for?
100%.
Exactly.
When you look at that cover, you think, oh, that looks like a nice book.
Yeah.
Let me go see what's inside. Let me read it. Let me see what it's about.
Yeah.
Similarly, as a person,
Yeah.
when you have a certain aesthetic, when you have a certain
Yeah.
appearance, if you have a bad appearance, I'm not going to say you don't look good, but when you have an aesthetic or an appearance that isn't
Yeah.
the greatest, it isn't the cleanest,
Yeah.
you don't look approachable.
I'm not disregarding those who say, well, someone could look good, but on the inside they're bad, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
That might be true, and as true as it is, it really doesn't matter. It's about you and presenting yourself in the best
I
way.
think the outward display has to be appealing.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what we're trying to achieve here. As long as it looks appealing, there's no one to judge what's right and what's wrong. But whatever looks appealing, we look to smell nice, to look presentable. And as a Muslim, whether you're at a workplace, whether you're volunteering, wherever you may be, you're walking down the street, you're an ambassador of Islam.
Subhanallah.
Yeah, you're an embodiment of what Sharia wants you to be. Somebody walking, we know, for example, the likes of the awliya Allah, when they're traveling, I've heard of Habib Umar, Habib Qasim. People have accepted Islam
Just by
in the
looking at him.
airports just by seeing him walking past.
Subhanallah.
We've seen videos.
Yeah, we've seen
Subhanallah.
videos.
We've seen
People
videos.
are reciting the Shahada Kalima, just asking, wow, what is this?
Allahu Akbar.
Just by his presentation, the way he's walking, the way he's presenting himself, and people are accepting Islam. That's the level we need to really be getting at.
When your appearance is good, everything else works out.
Even on a jurisprudential level, perfection of the salah begins with outwardly perfection.
Yes.
If a person stood there lazily, but in his heart he's feeling the halawa and the dhawq, then that's not ihsan in your salah, that's not itqan in the salah. It begins with the outward as well. So yeah, I think we've got another question from our live audience. Bismillah.
As Muslims, what can we do to have that presentability? Because it says that cleanliness is half iman. So as Muslims, what is so small steps we can take to maintain that presentability and to have that kind of, like you're saying, you have to be an ambassador of Islam?
Education. It starts with knowledge. If you don't learn, if you don't have the knowledge of your religion, if you don't realize the responsibility you carry as Khalifatullah fil ard, as a human being, as a Muslim on the earth, then you're never going to step up to the plate. So learn actual knowledge that will benefit you. I think we were talking recently about the trivium. The trivium being the three sciences that will really liberate your mind, allow you to think on a critical level. Grammar, rhetoric, and logic. Study these sciences and you'll really be able to think on a high level and really pick your words carefully. Look, that's one thing I'd put forward. What else would you say?
The Muslim Ummah's missing.
Yeah.
These three
Look, when you're an ambassador.
Somebody
for-
asked me, how do I orate well? And it always comes down to those three sciences. If you know your grammar, you know rhetoric, nuances of speech and styles of speech and all of that, and you're able to speak in a logical fashion, build logical arguments, you can literally sell a brick and make the person think it's a gold.
It's like that. What was it? Jordan Belford, when he says, "Here's a pen, sell it to me." If you've read the story or anything like that.
I think also answering Shaji here, it comes down to discipline. So for a Muslim, his discipline begins the moment he wakes up. Yeah. If you're going to wake up and you're not going to do your bed, I think that's where it starts. Something as simple as that. Getting up, doing your bed before you leave. There is no reason your mother is not your slave.
100%.
Your wife is not your slave that she should clean up after you. You go into the bathroom, making sure, for example, something as small as cleaning the toilet seat when you leave. Yeah, brushing your teeth. All of that builds to your discipline. That's the point I'm going to try and make. So when it comes to presentation, Your presentation is not just that outward presentation which is on the street, it starts at home. If you're scruffy and rough at home, you'll come out scruffy and rough as well. At home, if you're clean, you'll come out clean as well. And it's like, you know, for married couples, I remember reading a quote somewhere. The cleanliness of a woman is seen by the dress code of her man. And the haya and the modesty of a man is seen by the clothing of his wife.
Allah.
Wow.
As a
That's pretty powerful.
Just
isn't
quickly to answer Shahji's question as well before Hafiz Moeen, Hafiz as well,
Hafiz,
mashallah. Hafiz of
mashallah.
a few spari. May Allah raise you on
Hafiz
the
to
whole
Hafiz,
world.
inshallah.
Inshallah,
Ameen.
one day, inshallah.
Is of course we would always advise as young speakers, imams and khadims of the masjid, of course, is your jubba, shalwar kameez, the Islamic code, of course, for clothing. But for youngsters in general, if you're going to stick to the trackies, the tracksuits, the bottoms, the jackets, and all the brands out there, I think it's best to avoid tight clothing. Okay, you can still wear a three-piece suit and still look nice at an interview or at work with a shirt and trousers, but try to avoid anything which comes under the banner of immodesty. So that would be my advice on that.
it? Like clothing. see the
Ev-
clothing, so-
Look, every single thing you do, first and foremost, you're an ambassador for yourself. Whatever you do, you're representing yourself. You're representing Allah. You're representing your deen. You're also representing yourself. If you're showing yourself in a bad light, you're only tarnishing your own name.
Be your own brand.
Be your own, but yeah, sell yourself. You're selling yourself. Whatever you do, wherever you go, you're actively on a daily basis. Whatever you're doing, you're selling yourself. Like brother Sakib over here, who's got his teddy bear.
But as youngsters,
Alhamdulillah.
when you said you're representing yourself, you're also representing your parents.
Yeah, as a
Very
youngster,
shak.
100%.
Your dress code is really highlighting what your parents have accepted of you to wear. And if you're going to be scruffy, you're going to be rough, it shows that this is what your parents have accepted, they've allowed. You're really lowering that benchmark, that guard. But in all of this presentation, you should also pick on what Molana mentioned. You should not shy away from wearing your traditional clothing.
No.
It actually looks so beautiful.
It looks good.
You'll be surprised
It
how
does.
nice people look in shalwar
Can we
kameez.
not say also smelling nice? Is it not a
We
form of
mentioned that,
charity?
yeah.
Gotta
Form
smell
of
good.
charity.
So he
There's-
pulls out.
Going off what Hafiz there said before about having that discipline. There's
Definitely.
Sheikh Muhammad Abu Huda al-Yaqubi. He mentions that his father would have a to the minute schedule timetable of what to do.
Subhanallah.
He had a schedule of his daily routine of what to do, so that no minute was wasted. That's ultimate discipline. If you have that discipline within your life, as again, like I said,
Yeah.
within the home, if you have that discipline, outside the home,
Also,
have that
you know,
discipline.
your Islamic apparel, treat it as a uniform.
Yes.
At the moment I wear this, I'm a representative and I'm in uniform, meaning I've got guidelines. I can't act a certain way. I'm going to sit with a certain posture. And you'll find that the way you act with those clothes on, make their way and bed it into your character as well.
We also need to
Treat it as
mention,
uniform.
you must also mention, you must dress for the occasion.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to be doing is rocking up in shalwar kameez and you've got a job interview. Yeah? And when you're coming to the masjid, you're wearing those trousers where your backside is completely showing. You go into ruku and it's like, we recited the moon. We don't want to be in that situation.
We don't want Eid to come early.
We don't want it to come early. So dress for the occasion. When you're dressing for Allah and His Rasul, you're going into their presence. It's like, if you're going to court and you're going to be standing before the judge, you're going to be dressed neat. You look presentable. Even if you're praying salat at home. Many of us, when you're praying salat at home, we don't really take care of our clothing.
Yeah.
No, you're
It's
right.
like you're wearing a different top, let's say a black kameez and a white shalwar all over the place. But you forget that you're standing before Allah. What presentation should you really be showing in His presence?
That there is a level of clothing that Allah talks about in the Quran when He mentions why He gave clothing.
Subhanallah.
Libasan yuwari sawatikum, to cover your sin, your shamefulness. And then there's something called walibasu taqwa, and the clothing of taqwa. Dhalika khair. Now, of course, that means to cloak yourself in God consciousness as well. But I remember reading in a commentary of this that it said the libasu taqwa is the libas that the ulama of your locality and your generation wear.
Allah.
Dress yourself in accordance to them.
Subhanallah.
So this is another thing to do. Look at your ulama, those who you take inspiration from, those who you take your religion from,
Subhanallah.
and start to dress like them.
Mm.
And as the poet said, فَتَشَبَّهُ إِن لَمْ تَكُونُوا مِثْلَهُم. Be like, look like them if you can't be from them. Because إِنَّ التَّشَبُّهَ بِالْكِرَامِ فَلَاهُ. Because to look like the successful ones is in
And
of itself
you've
success.
mentioned as well, like places like the airport where you have been treated with that extra level of respect
Oh, 100%.
because of how you're dressed. And I've experienced this many times as well, is when you are dressed in the way you are. I mean, what's greater than many stories of the Imam Sharif itself, it's like a crown of honor
Yeah.
you are carrying on your head. And like you said, when you dress in a certain way, it reflects on your haya, your spirit and your heart. And how can you wear such clothing and be fahish and be ill and so forth? So definitely the Islamic clothing, your standard shalwar kameez, avoid the fancy colours, avoid the sparkles and whatnot. And you can touch upon that as well, because Hafiz Sahib, mashallah, when he did the Shifa Sharif, he spoke about this, the different colours Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would wear, the stripes and what have you. So avoid the bling bling, as you say, and definitely the libas of the ulama is
So,
most
no
beautiful.
glitter, no? Can't wear glitter on my clothes?
No glitter.
Chalo.
No
No mirrors.
No sparkles.
No mirrors, no nothing.
Well, yeah,
No,
but the
no,
point being, representing yourself as a brand, representing Allah and His religion,
Subhanallah.
and not just through your physical apparel, through your tongue, through your characteristics, through all those things as well.
And
Definitely.
Ramadan, I believe, is an opportunity where
Definitely.
everybody's iman is high.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to get into that rhythm.
Yeah. No one's going to judge you in Ramadan. If you didn't wear the jubbah before and you wore it in Ramadan, nobody will judge
Oh,
you.
yes,
Because
yes,
everyone
yes.
thinks,
You're
well,
right.
it's Ramadan anyway. Everyone's trying to be a better version of themselves. But if you do it in Ramadan, you can sustain that outside of Ramadan.
And if you do it for 40 days, it becomes a habit.
Well, there you go.
Yes,
40
yes,
days.
yes. And amongst groups of friends, you should promote this.
Yeah.
We know particularly at the university, you'll have Muslims that will wear jubba on a Friday. It's trending, isn't it?
Yeah, as in college, when I was in college,
Everybody would be
On a
wearing jubba
Friday.
on a Friday.
I've seen this
You'd
thing
see
where they wear
so-
really short jubbahs.
so
Make it a
many.
modest length as well, please.
but the fact that they're wearing a jubba and it's starting off to be a regular thing, I mean, this is going back about 10 years ago when I was in college. They were all wearing jubba, and when I seen my mate wearing it, and my friend was wearing it, I just thought, you know what? If he's wearing it, why can't I wear it? What's stopping me as a Muslim to represent me being a Muslim?
There's a quote from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf that I was watching yesterday, which is, what you pay attention to defines yourself.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it also
Very
goes
good.
for things like clothes, isn't it?
So again, so what you
Definitely.
pay attention to defines
Yourself.
yourself. Yeah, so a lot. I mean, we've addressed quite a few issues in this one podcast alone. But I think moving forward, as a community, try to feel Ramadan. Take advantage of Ramadan in the way that you dress, in the way that your friends, Muslim or non-Muslim alike, would see you, and they would actually be comfortable in being around you. And Ramadan should be that trigger time where you share that religious side of yourself, that presentation aspect of yourself. Going into work, if they allow you, for example, non-uniform day, to wear a Muslim outfit and show them, this is my heritage, this is my religion, this is where I come from.
And
Yeah. Also, there's a common tradition in Egypt where when Ramadan would come, you are to adorn your house and you put lanterns up everywhere.
Oh yes.
So one of the reasons I actually quizzed one of my teachers now, I said, why do you do that and what's the hukum shari'i on doing that? And he said, well, there is a hadith that on the first night of Ramadan, Allah tells Jannah to adorn itself for Ramadan.
Subhanallah.
So in light with that, we should adorn ourselves for the sake of Ramadan, internally, externally, and our homes around us as well.
Subhanallah.
Like Ustad said, take advantage of Ramadan. Take advantage of Ramadan. Volunteer more. This is the time where you will be going to the masajid every single night. If you can, if you're not working too early, you'll be there. Spend one day. Go to iftar. Help out one day. You'll start building up your skills. Take advantage of Ramadan.
Going an hour early, before iftar or before Taraweeh,
Giving it a little
getting
hoover.
yourself involved.
Just
It
to
goes a
set
long
up,
way.
yeah.
Anything, just
That's how I started.
helping out.
Last year, I was coming at Asr time. I'd come before Asr time, pray Asr, and then I'd start volunteering.
Subhan.
And
And that is the way forward. I think that is the message to the youth. Get involved, take advantage of Ramadan, take advantage of the roles you can play as a volunteer in masajid, and it goes along, is building that community, is networking. Hafiz, I mentioned that a few times. And whenever you need support, believe me, by Allah, those are the brothers that are going to be there for you.
So
You know the brothers that you have on the street, your boys, yeah, your crib, your gang, whatever. Okay, give me all the terms. Come on. Are there the
There's
terms?
so many terms.
Squad.
Your squad, yeah.
posse,
Your boys,
crew.
Your boys,
Boy
they ain't
gang.
going to be there for you. The
think
ones that will
there's-
be sincerely
Yeah.
and be there for you are those brothers that you're going to attach with in the masjid.
At the end of
Because
the day,
all of you, go
there
on.
is an ayah in the Quran, الأخلاء يومئذ بعضهم لبعض عدو إلا المتقين. That close friends on the day of judgment will actually be enemies of each other, except for the friends you had through taqwa. Through taqwa.
And just for the viewers, before we finish, all of us, before we started our journey of Dars Nizami, Hifz, coming to the Masjid, and all the things that we've spoken about, we all had friends in school and college, and we still have good associations and relationships with those people. But this panel here and everyone that's come on, where has our relationship, our love and bond built from? It's been built from the Masjid. So we itself are a very good example for that, alhamdulillah.
Another live question.
I think nowadays it's hard to get friends in school that are on deen, because if you do get friends on deen, they're mostly just the weirdo kids that are by themselves, and you don't get to have that experience with the cool kids.
They're the best people to be around. The
Yeah.
weirdo kids. They're the ones that are going to be successful.
Listen,
Maybe even those weirdo kids are the ones that need support.
look, at the end of the
You
day,
could be that support for them.
if you're the cool kid, who cares about the rest of the cool kids? Be the
So
cool
if you want
kid.
the right friends, come to the masjid.
Be the cool kid.
Yeah, you'll see other namazis bring their children to the masjid, and they're coming to the masjid actively. So are you. That becomes the common platform for you guys to meet.
Look,
And where better to meet than in the house of Allah.
Your school friends, it doesn't last. I think we can all speak for
Yeah,
ourselves.
it
Well,
doesn't.
it doesn't last.
Kids could set you
But
down.
those of my school friends who were in mosque with me at the same time, still to this day are the closest in my circle.
Subhanallah.
those kids that you're saying that might be the weirdos, that might not have many friends. Look, at the end of the day, you as an individual, you might have certain this is going back on skill sets. You might have certain skills and certain
Quality.
knowledge and qualities that you can actually show them and help them towards.
Build their confidence, self-esteem.
Moving them away from being that weird kid. That, remember, at the end of the day, we're all Muslim brothers. We're all brothers at the end of the day. And any situation, and if you see anyone that's having a difficult time, difficult situation, that's our responsibility as brothers, as Muslims, to help them out of that situation. And when you help them out of that situation, honestly, you'll see that they'll become the cool kid. They'll be that kid that everyone wants to be
And
friends
as
with.
Avsa was mentioned, if you are a regular attendee at the masjid, then the best place you can take them to open up
Is the masjid.
is the masjid, definitely, because they'll feel safer
It's a
and
safe haven for them.
everyone's
It is.
going to support them.
Inshallah. Take care, thank you very much for your valuable time. Inshallah, moving into the last 10 nights.
Allah.
So we've got quite a few different subjects for the last 10 nights. They're going to be all over the place. There ain't going to be a flow, I guess. But inshallah, something very interesting that is in the pipeline. And what I am also going to be working on is Eid night special. I'll leave that as a surprise. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.